Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to True Crime with the Sarge. I'm your host, Joseph Giacalone, and with me today we have Aphrodite Jones. She can do it all. She's a journalist, she's a radio host, she's a TV show host, she's a New York Times best-selling author, written, how many books is it now? 8, 9?
9.
How many are we dealing with?
9. Right?
9 books. Right. And also you can catch, she has 6 seasons of True Crime with Aphrodite Jones on the Investigation Discovery Channel. You can watch that and stream it on many different services. Aphrodite, thank you for your time today. I'm really looking forward to this.
Thank you, Joseph. It's my honor.
Well, actually, it's mine, right? So we have everybody here's in the room. We got people lining up. They've been waiting for this all week. So we're not going to waste much time. I want to get right into it. One of your books, I think it's the first one, right? The FBI Killer. With Mark Putnam. Was that your first book that you came out with?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So what kind of led you into that? Because this case is 1989, right? So how did that lead you into the true crime world?
So interestingly enough, I had been a columnist, nationally syndicated, covering cable television and the evolution of it. And I wanted to be an actress. I studied with Lee Strasberg, and that was my goal. I lived in California. And eventually I wound up starting a PhD program. And as I was writing my dissertation, I got a job in a town called Pikeville, Kentucky, which is at the end of the world. It's 2.5 hours from any airport. And it's Eastern Kentucky, Appalachia. And whilst there, I then became a radio host on the side because I was always interested in the broadcasting aspects of things. And we were reporting that a woman, Susan Daniel Smith, had been killed by an FBI agent. It was the first time in the history of the FBI, and since that any FBI agent was convicted of murder, he copped a manslaughter plea, and nobody was reporting it, Joseph. It wasn't anywhere. I'm like, okay, I know I'm at the end of the world, but what happened to CNN? What happened to, news? I don't get it. And so I wound up writing the book proposal because I was really at that point very sympathetic to what they called hillbillies and what I called her, a mountain woman, who nobody cared about. Nobody cared about her. And so I wrote the proposal, and it was sold. And, sometimes you wonder what you didn't know then. I didn't realize how little I had to work with because the FBI certainly didn't cooperate with me. The local police did on some level, but I really had to tell a story out of nowhere. Did that. Became a TV movie with Patricia Arquette called Betrayed by Love. Mark Putnam was played by Steven Weber. And so therefore I was expected to do another crime story. I did Cruel Sacrifice, about 4 teenage girls who killed a 12-year-old. It became a New York Times bestseller for months. And then that was the end of it. I was stuck, if you will, with the true crime genre. It really wasn't something I chose. It was a calling.
Well, actually, it was interesting. So, this whole Mark Putnam case is kind of interesting, but he only gets 16 years for this, right? So, what happened with that? Like, what did they end up charging with, manslaughter?
He copped a plea to manslaughter because what happened? The FBI is very reticent to go after their own, but ultimately, Susan's sister is the one that went to the FBI and to local police and said, "Look, if you don't do something about this, I'm calling Geraldo Rivera. Like, this is crazy." And she had a positive pregnancy test result from her sister, who she knew was threatening Mark Putnam. Like, if you don't divorce your wife and marry me and take me out of here in Appalachia, I'm going to the FBI. I'm going to your wife. I'm going to report you. So there was knowledge that he had not only motive but opportunity, and ultimately, the FBI gave him a polygraph exam. They met him in Washington, D.C. He had gotten relocated to Florida, near Fort Lauderdale, Sunrise, Florida, and everything was good for him except now the police came after him, the FBI came after him. And when they showed him a pair of his gym shorts, which he had left at Susan Daniels' house, that's when he started to crack. And under the pressure of that, he failed the polygraph and then ultimately agreed to lead authorities to her remains because he had gotten away for it for a number of years, gotten away with it. And so they had to discover her remains and the little gold cross that she was wearing. She was pregnant, So there were fetal remains as well. And that's how he got the plea deal. So really, he didn't even have to serve 16 years. He served only 8 because on good behavior, he got out in 50% of the time at that, that was it is the rule in many states, not all of them, but, So he didn't really pay for his crime, as far as I'm concerned. And, 8 years, he lost his career. It turned out his wife died before he was let out of prison. So there's that. But at the end of the day, you're asking, like, why did he get so few years? I can't tell you. He made a deal. Without him leading her to them to her bones, without him leading authorities to her bones, her remains, there was no way to find Susan Daniel Smith in all the hills of Kentucky and Appalachia. I mean, there's not like an area you can comb that person was killed jogging in a park. No, they would never have found her. There would have never been proof.
Wow. So one thing I learned about, reading about you and I've watched, I don't know how many episodes of True Crime with Aphrodite Jones. I couldn't tell you, but one thing I've picked up on you is that you are laser focused on the topic at hand, and the way I like the way you interview people, the way you talk to them. I wouldn't want to be on the other end of that interview.
Well, especially when it's a killer. That's always, my favorite place to go. Obviously, I deal with the victims and their families, and it's traumatic for me as it is for them. I truly empathize with victims because having lost both my parents at a young age, even though they weren't killed, there's still the sense of they're never coming back. And most victims will tell you there's no closure. Even if there's justice, there's no closure. You lost your loved one, they're never coming back. So I have that, ability to empathize with victims' families, but it's the killers who, when I have an opportunity to interview them in prison on camera or on the phone, who I really kind of have a sneaky way of going after. It's a little bit like a police interrogation, although I backtrack more than the police would do because I don't have to catch them and I don't have to make them confess. I just have to find out what makes them tick.
Well, you also have the skill of being even people that aren't the killers, right? So I saw a couple of the interviews you did with some jury members. We're going to get into the Michael Peterson case, and we're also going to get into the Scott Peterson case, right, where you spoke to those jurors, and they were all very forthcoming, right? You asked the question, and they kind of give it to you. And there was one incident where you kind of did like the silent treatment, like where you asked the question, and the person answered it, and you didn't say nothing, and all of a sudden they started filling in the rest of the gap. So it was actually some good techniques there. You would have been a great detective.
Thank you. I appreciate that coming from you, Joe.
So the latest book, right, came out in 2023, Levi's Eyes, right? So this was about Carlson, who is probably some people that have never heard about this, but I guess you got fascinated with this in regards. We don't want to give everything away because this is a brand new book, so we don't want to give away the total secrets here. But common theme here, right? Life insurance policies, you name it, right? So we have a mother, the wife, and the son. Right, big time policy. We had a $700,000 policy on his son, who was killed. Right, that ultimately led to his arrest. But some good police work in here, but it kind of took some pushing, right?
Well, so just to give a nutshell, if I can. First of all, people do know about this who are in the crime world because this story was covered by 2020, Dateline, My Show, On ID, Oxygen, etc. People know the story. The story is that his wife died in a fire, his first wife, in California, but he was able to rescue his 3 children out of the house. So he then moves to New York with his children. He couldn't, unfortunately, rescue his wife, who he had a $200,000 life insurance policy on, which he collected. However, once in New York, he meets a new woman who he woos, marries her. She's taking care of 3 stepchildren, little kids that are 4, 5, and 6, and they have a child together, a son. So there's a family of 4. She's married to him, Cindy Carlson, for 18 years. Okay? So this man managed to live double lives and not get caught. In 2008, the first murder happened on New Year's Day, 1991. 2008, Levi is his son, biological son, is crushed by a farm truck. He's underneath the truck working with gears, trying to help his father out for $50. And the truck falls on him and he's crushed. It wasn't Carl who took out the insurance policy on his adult child. He got Levi, he cozied up to his son and got Levi to agree, let's go to an insurance agent and take out a policy. And it wasn't just any old policy. It was $300,000. You need this for your daughters. Anything happens to you, you're divorced now. You don't want your wife to get the money. Let me be the beneficiary of the policy and take out an accident rider too. So it equaled a total of $700,000. And of course, then Levi had the accident 2 to 3 weeks later. And it was ruled an accident. Nobody did anything about it. It was just done, like the Christina Carlson case back in California. There was no evidence. And now that he was cremated, both of them were cremated, and now that leaves for no real evidence, and nothing was challenged at the accident scene in New York, because he was 45 minutes away at a funeral with his wife when Levi was crushed, supposedly, right? And they came home to find him crushed under the truck. So the truth of the matter is, Cindy Carlson, his second wife, is the person who actually went after him and ultimately trapped him into making a confession. And she did that by eventually getting with the police, and they wired her. Very risky business, because here she is married to this man, and she's realizing, it takes her a number of years to realize that she's married to a killer.
And he had a life insurance policy on her that she didn't know about, correct?
Well, so when she went to a PI to, first report her suspicions, remember now she's in denial. She's having suspicions because they had a barn fire. 3 horses were killed in the barn fire, and one of them was like a member of the family, Ginger. And, now she's starting to put together, what about that barn fire? What about Levi? What about what happened in California? But she doesn't want to believe it. And but she goes to a private investigator, and what she discovers is that with the $700,000, he put Cindy on all the paperwork for that money, and she thought it was real. She didn't understand. And what ultimately the PI realized is that he had taken out annuities with death benefits that equaled over $1 million if Cindy Carlson were to die. So now she realizes she's going to be next. And since there's zero evidence.
Unbelievable, right? Follow the money, right?
Follow the money. So zero evidence. Okay, nothing. The crime scene, there's no crime scene. A truck fell on this young man. There's no body. There's no nothing. She had to elicit a confession from him. And so it wasn't just right away that the police wired her. No one was believing her. Remember, he got away with the first wife's murder. And he's playing Mr. Wonderful Father with his youngest son, then Cindy's son, Alex. He's taking him to school. He's the chaperone for school trips to DC. I mean, this guy is, Mr. Wonderful Father. Cindy can't believe it. But when she hears that, she realizes, no, this is real. This is real. And she starts to put a tape recorder in her bra and meet with Carl. Because at some point, Joe, she's living with the killer she's got nunchucks and a scissor under her bed. Okay. Because she doesn't know if he's going to kill her in her sleep. Finally, she moves out. She can't take it anymore. Wow. Right? And you think about that. She can't take it anymore. She moves out. And now is when she's finding out from the PI that, oh my God, I'm going to be next. What do I do? She can't move that far away because their son's in school. He's in high school. She's down the road from him. And he's stalking her and staking out where she's moved to. And ultimately, she puts a recorder in her bra, meets with him under the auspices, we're going to get back together. We're going to get back together. I want to be Mrs. Carlson again. And she says, but I can't be with you unless you come clean. Like, she thinks he's going to at least tell her about the barn fire. She has no idea that what he's going to tell her about is Levi's death, which ultimately he admits he caused the truck to fall on Levi that he tipped the truck over like a wheelbarrow on his son, his 23-year-old son, who's the father of 2 girls. And she has it on tape in her bra in a recorder. This is the 3rd meeting they had that she's recording. And at this point, she's going back to the police in Seneca County saying, here, listen to this, listen to this. The 3rd meeting is when he admitted about the wheelbarrow, how he actually intentionally did this. And unfortunately, the authorities in Seneca County there was the audio, it was inaudible, the area where he confessed, because he had chosen the restaurant they were meeting at, and he picked a college bar and sat in the busy bar area of the restaurant. So it was inaudible. When he told her about the wheelbarrow, when he told her that, yes, Levi had already lived a good life, he had kids, he was married, and he's divorced, and he's a screw up, it's okay. Now she goes to the police with that recording, and they can't make it out. So they need her to recreate that conversation, but this time they wire her, and they have undercover agents all around her in the restaurant. And he wouldn't recreate it. She kept saying, well, but you told me it was a wheelbarrow, you took the car. And no, I didn't, because now he suspects her. Now he's asking, am I in a booby trap? Am I being set up here? Do you have a recorder in your purse? And think about it. Had she not elicited enough of a confession, there's no other evidence. Now he's after her because he's realizing she's wise to him. And he's told her. He's told her he committed the murder.
Yeah.
So she's not only wise to him, but she's going with him under the guise of, I'm your wife, marital privilege, while they put the law enforcement undercover agents around her for 2 reasons. One, so she'd feel safe, but the other, the real reason, because marital privilege would have precluded them from entering the confession into a court. And if it's in public, as you probably know, and there's people who can overhear it, then it's admissible. So that's the way they did it. They had undercover agents within earshot. It was a fight by the defense, but was ultimately allowed into court, and he took a plea deal for killing his son, admitted to it. What he admitted to, because in the final tape, he wouldn't say that he knocked the truck over deliberately. What he said was, I took the opportunity once the truck fell on him to walk away. So what he pled guilty to.
How you do that?
He made the opportunity, Joe. Right?
Yeah.
He created
I don't know how you do that to your kid, right? I mean, how do you do that?
Well, that's the big question. But there's a secret behind the story, and this bizarre relationship between Levi and his father that is the reason that even though people know this story, the book has really been selling like hotcakes. And I mean, I see over 1,000 reviews. It's only been out for a few months on Amazon. I'm shocked because I know people do not know the inside of the story. And the reason it's so compelling is because I had access to that killer on the phone for almost 2 years. And I was able to elicit out of him on tape comments that are so outrageous. People read the book and say, I had to keep going back and looking at the pictures to understand this is really real. Craziness. The mind of a psychopath.
Wow. Yes. And the link to that book, as well as all of Aphrodite's books, is in the show notes. Also, her official webpage is up there too, and also a link to the Investigation Discovery channel, which has true crime with Aphrodite Jones, all 6 seasons. So you can make sure you check that out. So I actually have a good question here from the audience. It says,
go ahead.
Okay, got a great question here from somebody who says, Miss Jones, there's so many true crime stories out there. How do you decide which one to write about?
So it's a learned process. Like I say, the first book I kind of fell into, but then after that, I was in this genre, and I realized it's a calling. And yes, there's so many murders that happen. You can't possibly cover them all. When I did my show, which by the way, you can get on Discovery Plus, no longer ID, but I mean, there are 6 seasons of it. For every case we covered, there's another 3, 4, 8 cases that we're looking at, right? So the element of when I decide to write a book about it is even more critical, let's say, than when I say just doing a television episode on it, because I need to know that I'm going to get into the mind of that killer somehow, that I'm going to get the victims' families to cooperate and want to talk. All right. And that, at the end of the day, apart from all of that, that the story has enough suspicion around it and mystery around it that it will hold a reader throughout, 300 pages or however long my books are usually around that amount. Because what people don't realize is if it's an open and shut case, right, Joseph, you know this, if they know there's the bloodstain evidence, the person, the husband took whatever is gone, and there's just an overwhelming evidence against this person, there's no real story to tell. You know what I mean? I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. Yep, I think that covers it. Speaking of stories, right? So I cannot believe we're actually going to talk about this guy again, because I thought this case was far from, ever going to see the light of day again. But Scott Peterson is back on the news with this time the L.A. Innocence Project, not the Innocence Project, right, folks? There's two different things here. The L.A. Innocence Project. I watched your entire episode with about Scott Peterson case. That was from a couple of years ago. I tell everybody, make sure you go on there and watch that episode specifically, because it gets it back in the news again. So Modesto, California, Lacey Peterson, the son Connor. So tell us first of all, let's fast forward now to 2024. When you heard that this whole Scott Peterson thing was coming back out, what was your first reaction?
I'm mortified. Okay. Outraged is my reaction. Outrage, and also in the absolute firm belief that this is a bunch of nonsense. Now I know, and I've had people come to me and all along say, oh no, he didn't do it. And now of course there's even more reason for people to either play devil's advocate or truly want to believe that he's not guilty. However, I was in that trial gavel to gavel, and I can tell you with complete certainty that he killed his wife and his son. He's the killer. And there was such an overwhelming amount of circumstantial evidence. And what people don't necessarily understand is that, well, it's only circumstantial evidence. Well, usually that's what it is. They're not smoking guns. Usually in a criminal case, it is circumstantial evidence. In his case, they found cement. And in this warehouse where he hid a boat that no one knew about, that there were circles in that warehouse of the cement weights that he made, that there were searches that he did on the internet for tides in the San Francisco Bay, that there were, various stories he told about where he was on the Christmas Eve day. One person he tells he was golfing, another person he tells he was fishing, all kinds of circumstantial evidence that led to him cleaning up. There were mops found. I mean, just so much. And then, of course, there's all the evidence of consciousness of guilt. If you recall, he's sitting at the memorial service. Everybody in that town is overwhelmed. It became a huge story that blew up in the tabloids, TV. He never anticipated that. And he's standing at the memorial service for his wife, talking to the mistress and pretending he's in Paris and smiling, by the way, not up on the stage with the family. That's his wife. That's his child. Okay?
Yeah, with the dog barking in the alleyway, right?
Right.
There's a dog barking in the alleyway, and the Eiffel Tower is beautiful, right? Yeah, I mean, and listen, I putting his alibi at the crime scene probably wasn't the brightest idea either.
Well, that's it. So when I interviewed the jury, the biggest thing they told me was the reason that they found him guilty, 100% felt he was guilty, is because he put himself at the crime scene by showing a receipt that he was at the Berkeley Marina when Lacey was disappeared. Now, in his mind, he believes he weighted her down. She's going to be swept out to sea eventually, under the Golden Gate Bridge. And that's going to be the end of her. I mean, look at Natalie Holloway. You put them in the ocean. If they're weighted down, you never find that body. That was his understanding of it. So he felt he was safe saying, here I was fishing. I don't know what happened. Somebody was after her. She was walking the dog. I don't know. However, there was a storm that hadn't happened for 100 years that churned up the San Francisco Bay. So within a number of months, while everybody in Modesto is looking for Lacey, he's worried and keeps going back to the crime scene. What if something happens? What if they find something? Because they are now dredging the bay. And ultimately, because of that freak storm, both Lacey's body came up and so did Connor's separately, a 1.5 miles away from where he said he was fishing. And by the way, he was fishing on an island that was a garbage dump. So the juror said to me, the fact that he put himself there and those bodies washed up a mile from where he said he was, I mean, absolute guilty.
And not just that, there's other things at play too, right? So didn't he sell her car? Or he's gonna plan on putting the house up for sale. If you're waiting for your wife to come back, why would you want to start getting rid of her car and the house and everything else?
He sold her car.
And the porn, right? He got
himself a porn subscription. He sold the car. But even more than that, he turned the baby's nursery, which he had painted and wallpapered in a blue theme, a nautical theme. He turned that into a storage unit. So he knows she's not coming back. He does not want that kid. And one of the motivations behind all this, in my opinion, and I really truly believe it, is that Scott Peterson was the apple of his parents' eye. His parents, Lee and Jackie Peterson, were married. It was second marriage for both of them. So the only child they had together was Scott. And he was carried around literally until he was 2 or 3 years old. Feet never touched the ground. He was spoiled to death. He was the light of the families, the apple of everyone's eye. And so now when he turns 30 and he's faced with Lacey, he thought couldn't get pregnant. That's number one. She had a fallopian tube problem, had originally said she can't get pregnant. Now she's pregnant. He says to her brother, I was really kind of hoping that she wasn't able to get pregnant. He says it to Brent Rocha, her brother. And what does that tell you? He did not want to be supplanted by his son, Connor. He wasn't going to have that happen to him. He had to be the star. He had to be the center of the universe. And the way to do that, because of course, everybody's now so excited about the baby. Lacey's very pregnant. The baby's coming. Everyone's so excited about the baby. He's no longer going to be the center of attention. So that's one reason. The other reason is once there's a baby, he thought he's going to live in San Diego in La Jolla where he was with his parents. Now he's not only been brought to Modesto where his parents bought them the house, but he's got a kid there now. He's going to be strapped to, in his mind, bumfuckle Egypt, okay, and never going to be able to get out of it because Lacey's with her mother and her sister and her family, and he's going to be stuck there as a fertilizer salesman. So for those reasons, he needed to get rid of Connor. And if Lacey had to go with him, then that's the way it went.
Wow. Yeah, she had a $250,000 insurance policy too. But just even what was in his car when they found it, right? He's got his goatee and his hair dyed. He's got $10,000 or $15,000 in cash, camping equipment, his brother's driver's license. Yeah, it's something that normal people would do, right? After you're going to be playing golf and stuff like that. Good grief. Like I said, when I heard this, I was kind of like, you got to be kidding me.
Right? And not only that, by the way, Sarge, he had in the trunk, and I have pictures of this, he had an axe, rope, other items that would be good, duct tape, all of that in his trunk. Why was he driving around with that? Because he kept calling Amber Frey, who he's now realizing is his only witness, to the fact that he told her his wife died long before Lacey was killed, right? He was in mourning over his dead wife, who's very much alive. And he doesn't want her to come out of the woodwork. So he keeps calling her, and the police are encouraging her to talk to him. She's taping, they don't know. He doesn't know, rather. And he's trying to get her to meet him in Lake Arrowhead, and here and there. Because what was he planning to do with the axe and the ropes and the duct tape, do you think?
Yeah, well, like I said, Amber Frey, I think, dodged the bullet, at least in that one. Good grief. She was going to be like, I guess, the star witness against him. I mean, all this other stuff coming out. I mean, he had to try to, he made phone calls, right?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So he was trying to get her to come out in the middle of nowhere, right? Hey, come out here. I got a friend's house. They already invited me out somewhere in the middle of nowhere.
Right. And even went so far as to he placed a Trader Joe's bag in a parking lot for her with gifts for her birthday. There was "Come Away With Me, Amber," and intricately drawn card to her, and "I love you," and a necklace and other items that I'll take care of your baby, her young child. So he was trying to lure her in every way possible. And yes, she was the star witness. Without her, without all of those taped phone calls, which shows you what he was doing during the memorial service, which you can hear when he's lying on top of lying on top of lying about what. And then, of course, there's another thing the jury told me in terms of his guilt, that they watched the police interview Burkini, and Detective Burkini's interviewing him. It's Christmas Eve night. Lacey's missing. Nobody knows anything. People are panicked. People are looking. People are freaked out all over her whole family. It's not yet hit the news. And what is he doing at 12:01 on Christmas Eve and now Christmas Day in the interrogation room? He's answering questions. He's nonchalant. First of all, you watch that footage. You can't believe it. He's kind of like matter of fact. She went here, and I think she was going to make Christmas cookies and whatever. And at some point during that interview, his phone rings, and he doesn't pick it up. Now, if your wife is missing, with your pregnant wife, with your child is missing, and your phone rings, you don't pick it up? I think what happened, I'm sorry. Let me get this. Let me go back.
No.
His phone rang, and he picks it up because it's Lacey's sister, and he's very nonchalant on that phone call. Like, "Oh, okay, la la la, I'll talk to you later." There's no, "Oh my God, did you find?" Nothing. There's nothing. Okay? Later, when he's being interviewed by a local media person, that's when his phone rings in the middle of the interview. And he said, "That's okay, I don't need to get it." This is when the whole world is looking for Lacey Peterson. Yes. Those are the things that the jury...
Yeah, I saw that in your episode. I think it was Amanda Gomez.
Yes. Not Amanda. Gomez was the last name. I'm sorry, it's been 20 years now.
Yeah, Gomez.
Yeah, I can't remember her name. It doesn't come to me immediately, but Gloria Gomez.
Yeah, that was a weird scene. Gloria. But that was a weird scene. He just gets up after it's ringing, because she even said, like, "Do you want to get that kind of thing?" Like, what is that? And he's just like,
right?
Yeah. So, like I said, I mean, and the evidence. Ugh.
The amount of evidence.
And I can't believe that, like I said, we're even talking about this.
I know, right? Well, and that's the thing. I mean, they're literally an Innocence Project took this up, and literally they want to say now there was a van. There was a robbery across the street. We heard about it in the trial. They tried to take a safe out of these people's home. I think they did. That has nothing to do with the cell phone pings of Scott Peterson leaving the scene in his car with a boat that he's trailing along, and a piece of hair from Lacey that is a mitochondrial DNA match to her mother that's in that boat in a pair of pliers. And, people now want to say, this is what I'm getting from the devil's advocates or the wannabe believers in his innocence is, well, someone else could have killed her. And then she wound up in his, he wound up dumping her body. Like, what? What are you talking about? Yeah. I mean, people are saying, we saw her get put into a white van when people were robbing the house across the street. First of all, it wasn't on the same day. Suddenly now they're saying it's on the same day. It wasn't. It's a couple days before. But second of all, even if it's on the same day, what does that got to do with the fact that your pinging shows from your cell phone towers that you were on the phone exactly in the time that you went to the Berkeley Marina, and your boat that you were hiding, okay, your fishing, your story is all attached to this and no one else.
And the fact that he had two different stories for the same day, because he knew that the first one, go and play golf, was too easily to be found out that he didn't go. So he had to say about the marina. He had to put himself there because he had to pay for it.
Right. Well, also, he thought that those bodies were going to be never be churned up. So, you know, he figured, I'm safe. Let me show them where I was. I was far away from where Lacey was kidnapped from. First of all, he comes home and the dog is running around, okay? And he's not worried. What does that tell you?
Yeah, and he was totally stoic in court. I mean, you wouldn't believe, you know, I guess, you know, the jurors in your show, they said that when they showed the crime scene photos of both the baby and Lacey, that he wouldn't even look at it and wouldn't make any reaction to it. And, you know, that he was totally had zero emotions about this trial.
Zero emotions, absolutely. Sat there like he thought, absolutely, I'm going to get away with this. And beyond that, at times it felt like he was literally watching a movie of himself. You know, like you just wondered, like, what is going through this person's mind, because they're not really here. They're just like interested in the whole thing. Like, oh, isn't this interesting? It's bizarre.
Yeah, like I said, I hope that, you know, I know his lawyer is Mark Garagos at the time, because he was doing an interview the other day. I saw it, and they're bringing up this. He brought it up in the trial about a homeless group of people in a van, you know, and now all of a sudden we're talking about a van again that was burnt out. It was an orange one, I think. They showed a picture of it in the news. It was an orange van now, and that there was maybe DNA in it, and they want it tested. And
right.
Oh, boy.
It's just a bunch of nonsense. And, you know, I actually went to that homeless center, because that's the kind of research I do, just to see in Modesto. I went there, and I realized once I got there that no. These are not people who have access to a van that are running around. These people are homeless, toothless, drug addicts, whatever, but they're not getting access to a van and kidnapping a woman. That's not happening here. It just wasn't, it's not real. And, you know, again, the amount of he's searching the tides. He's, you know, in the San Francisco Bay weeks before. He tells Amber Frey, I'm in mourning for my dead wife, weeks before. He does everything in his power to make sure the tarp that was over the boat, he puts gasoline all over it so that there's, you know, no trace of any evidence, smell, DNA. He knows what to do. He figured it out.
Yeah, and I'm still trying to figure out how he did this with a 14-foot boat in San Francisco Bay. I mean, good grief.
Right? I agree. That was
I mean, I've been there. I wouldn't be doing that in a 14-foot boat. I can tell you what a chance he took.
Right? Well, he needed to get her into a place with his unborn child where nobody would find her and where she would just completely disappear, like a Natalie Holloway. That's what he was looking to do, and that's why he took that chance. You know, he needed it to be also on a holiday so that everybody's sort of not in the typical mode of things. And I think, you know, he chose the day, he chose the time and place. The only thing we don't know is how did he kill her? Right? We don't know that. And that's where it leaves an opening for all the armchair detectives.
Right, and they just basically find a torso, right? Because they found she didn't have a head, arms, and legs, right? It just basically a torso
with barnacles on it. Yes.
So somebody didn't want her identified either. So that was, you know, I guess you didn't think about DNA and all the other stuff that you can do now.
No, Joe, no, that's not what it was. That happened because he put weights on her arms and legs, so the torso came up. The other pieces of her body, her limbs, were weighted down by anchors that he made. cement anchors that he made.
Gotcha.
And we saw pictures of the anchors
Yeah,
that were in his warehouse.
yeah, he had them in his garage, right?
No, he had a warehouse that he used for his fertilizer salesman business. And that's where he hid the boat. No one knew about it. And that's where he made the weights with cement. And detectives later found, and we saw pictures of all the circles, yes, that matched the weights. So, oh no, he was
And he had the handles on him.
Right, exactly. He methodically planned and plotted this out. So there's not even a matter of a forethought. It's not a matter of premeditation only. It's also as you say, in the aftermath, what he does. All right. The selling her stuff before she gets home, taking a porn subscription, making the nursery into a storage unit. Everything he did in the aftermath shows. I mean, if he hadn't done this, why is he laughing and smiling at her memorial service? Why is he absolutely has no remorse whatsoever that his wife is dead and his kid is dead? While people are out putting out flyers to help find Lacey, the cops are looking at him. He's sitting in a parking lot, okay? Throws the flyers into the garbage can and is talking to Amber. I mean, it's inconceivable that anybody could think that this guy's not guilty.
Yeah, no, like I said, I can't believe it. But let's switch, right? So we have another Peterson. This is from one of your other books, A Perfect Husband. Michael Peterson, right? I know you didn't write a book about Drew Peterson, did you? Because like I said, the Petersons, that name was...
Right. I actually didn't write a book about Scott Peterson either. I covered it for Fox with O'Reilly at the time. Was going to write a book, but it was so big of a story that there were too many books coming out. And I thought, you know what? I don't want to, I can't get involved with all this competition for a story. And then I was at the Drew Peterson trial because I was considering doing that case for my show. At the time I was doing my show True Crime on ID, and I considered it. I went to Joliet and watched that trial a little bit. It's a really sad story that those defense attorneys got up and held a press conference. I was there, in which they basically were mocking Stacy Peterson's family because she's still missing and no one has ever found her, and Drew Peterson's never been held accountable for that murder. In any event, I didn't do that story for many reasons. But I did do the Michael Peterson story, and I interviewed him in prison after he lost all his appeals. And that's on my show. And yes, I wrote that book. A Perfect Husband. That's what I call it.
A Perfect Husband. So the question comes out to who is responsible, right? So for those that didn't watch it, they'll get the who part eventually. But, a lot of people fall down the stairs around this guy.
Well, that's it. So his wife, Kathleen Peterson, fell down the stairs in their mansion in Durham, North Carolina, and in 2001. And then it turns out that a close friend of his fell down the stairs and died in Germany 16 years prior. What are the chances that lightning strikes twice?
Don't believe in coincidences.
No, I don't think anybody in law enforcement believes in coincidences, right?
Probably not, especially with a staircase, right? First of all, rarity all in itself. Let alone, one's a rarity. Two, I mean, we're talking like you better go play the lotto now too, because I think you have a better chance of winning it than seeing this happen.
Right.
But just from his so his 911 calls are a little sketchy, right? So maybe a little deception through 911 calls. You would think that when somebody calls 911 that they would be in some hysteria kind of thing. Dispatcher kind of throws them off too.
He was a good actor. He was putting it on, my wife, but then he hangs up. Who hangs up on 911? You're trying to get the authorities.
Somebody who didn't like the question, right?
He says she's still breathing in the first call, but yet he hangs up on 911. She fell. Get here, she's breathing. Then in the next phone call, after they get disconnected, she's suddenly not breathing anymore. Well, when the police get there and the
Yeah.
crime scene, investigators are there, they realize that the blood is all dried. And there are other things that never were brought into the documentary on Netflix, The Staircase. The evidence that's there was never presented to the audience of that 13-hour epic Netflix series, docu-series. For example, luminol that showed his feet going back and forth from the staircase to the mudroom like rabbit tracks. Okay, what's he doing? The blood drop that's out on the front of the house that they can't find the murder weapon, but they believe it was a fireplace tool, would have that drip come off of it. Things like that are not in the documentary at all. This man is guilty as hell, and yet he's out there with a plea to say an Alfred plea. I don't know if you people know what that is, but in essence, an Alfred plea is a loophole in the system, which allows you to say, I'm not guilty. I'm not pleading that I am guilty. The reason I'm pleading guilty is because I'm admitting that there's enough evidence that a jury might possibly find me guilty, but I'm not guilty. That's the plea he took. He got that deal.
And one of the people in the chat room says, Drew Gambino said the owl did it and put out a bunch of emojis. Tell us about the owl theory of the defense, because this one's it's hysterical.
So here's the thing. Number one, people are obsessed with this owl, that an owl killed Kathleen Peterson. That's the call. Now, let me go back and tell you that never came into court. Had that come into a court of law, the defense attorney would have been laughed out of the courtroom, okay? I actually asked the judge, Orlando Hudson, when I did my show on this case about it, and he wouldn't even entertain it. He just rolled his eyes like, are you kidding me? You're kidding me. That said, the people want to believe in the bizarre and in the unimaginable, I guess. So there are many people out there who want to argue with me and believe that what happened is this, according to now a new theory after the case is long over, that Kathleen Peterson was in the front of the house putting out Christmas reindeer, lights, whatever. And Michael Peterson is in the back by the swimming pool having a cigar at 2 o'clock in the morning. And that she was attacked by an owl. And therefore she ran in the house and ran up the stairs to get a towel. And that's how the blood got all over the stairwell. I mean, really? Do you know if you Google owl attack and fatality of a human, only one name comes up, and that is Kathleen Peterson.
That's interesting, right? It's just like, I guess, less than getting struck by lightning, which is pretty rare. I mean, yeah. So he's actually out, right?
Sorry, excuse me? He's out, yeah.
I said he's out of prison. Yeah.
Let me just say one other thing about this owl, okay? Because the neighbor is the person who came up with the theory to begin with. And there's no proof whatsoever. But what he did is he got into microscopic samples of her hair, because he's a lawyer next door. And not the lawyer on the case, but a lawyer. And so on his own, he took it upon himself. And he's showing me microscopic evidence of feathers in her hair. Well, guess what? When you sleep on down pillows, you know what happens? Microscopic elements of feathers come into your hair. Like, are you kidding me? And I think the reason he came up with that theory, because I interviewed the man myself, is that he grew up in the house that he was living in next door to the Petersons. He grew up there. He lived there as an adult. He was already in his 60s, I believe. At the time I interviewed him, he'd had a whole life there in his perfect little world of the best part of Durham, North Carolina, right? Very exclusive area. And now he doesn't want to believe he's living next door to a murderer or a murder. So he comes up with this owl theory. Do you know how big the owls are in that area? The size of a cell phone. So you want me to believe that an owl the size of the cell phone attacked Kathleen Peterson and killed her by, putting enough wounds into her head And of course, you know, you and I would do, if we got attacked by a bird, the first thing we do is run in the house and run up the stairs, right? It's insane.
Unbelievable. So here's a question from Karen. She said, what was it like to interview Michael Peterson?
So here's the thing. When I interviewed him, it was for my show. I'd already written the book. So I found it incredible that he would talk to me because he's a novelist and I'm sure he read my book and he knows that I nailed him to the cross. But he takes the interview. He agrees to it because he's lost all his appeals at that point. So there's nothing to lose. And when I interviewed him, he says, of course, Kathleen knew I was bisexual. There was no problem there. Well, yeah, it was. Because the night she found out on his computer, all the gay porn and emails showing that he was meeting up with a male prostitute, that's the night he killed her. Right? She didn't know. And then he says to me, and this is amazing for you, the caller that's interested. He says, I said, well, people say, you know, she fell down the stairs and that's how she got killed and how she died. And he said, I thought she fell down the stairs, but nobody wants to believe that one. It's like, he said it. It came out of his mouth like that. It's just, when they say truth is stranger than fiction, it certainly is. And, you know, he is out. You know why he's out? You know why?
Well, he had 16 years, right? And then he already spent enough time, whatever it was. He had 8 years or whatever, and they let him after Alfred. Okay, what?
No. He's out because Dr. Henry Lee of OJ fame was the blood expert that the defense hired. Okay, so you have the guy coming in who was actually literally doing autographs in the elevator. I saw it. He gets up on the stand and he's blowing ketchup onto a white cardboard to show how the spatter would come, how, you know, she fell and the blood spatter from her head from the well, he doesn't say attack, from the fall. Now the blood expert for the state, Dwayne Deaver, was up against Dr. Henry Lee. So he did an unusual amount of experiments that later were considered to be, quote, junk science. That's what's shown in the staircase on Netflix. Oh, this guy's a joke, junk science. And then it turns out that there is a case overturned that Dwayne Deaver had testified in, a separate murder, in which he testified that blood evidence showed this person was the killer when it wasn't blood, it wasn't human blood. And he literally perjured himself on the stand because it later was discovered that in his notes as a SBI or State Bureau investigator, he actually had a different thing written down in his notes about it not being human blood, but on the stand he testified that it was. So the case got thrown out. The person was exonerated, who had been put in prison, and at that point, before even the person was exonerated, Peterson's lawyer jumped up. I need a mistrial. The blood expert is a liar. He went after my client. He did phony experiments. This whole thing is bogus, and they were granted a mistrial. Now the mistrial allowed. Somehow his lawyer was able to let Michael Peterson out on an ankle bracelet until we have a new trial. And that went on for a number of years with the ankle bracelet. So you see all of that in the Netflix documentary where he's now out and his daughters believe him. His family believes him. He's being framed. He's being gone after by the police. He's this, he's that. Well, the daughters who are his biggest supporters are the daughters of the woman that he killed in Germany. So in other words, these two girls, Martha and Margaret Ratliff, who never changed their last name because he didn't officially adopt them, they would have to believe that he killed their stepmother, because they were 2 and 3 years old when their mother was killed, that he killed the woman that raised them, Kathleen Peterson, and that he also killed their biological mother, Elizabeth Ratliff. And, they can't wrap their head around it. I can understand that. So you see a documentary where they're very sympathetic to him. And ultimately what happens is he says, okay, I don't want to put you girls through a trial. I don't want to put you, my sons, through a trial. I'm just going to take this Alfred plea, which says I'm not guilty, but I think they could find me guilty. We don't need to all go through a trial. And because he had already served time, with the Alfred plea being a plea deal, he walked away. He's free.
Wow. So I just have a few minutes left because
Okay.
I promised I would keep you not longer than we would go. So all the big trials that are happening right now going on, which one are you most focused on, or which one do you see maybe your next book coming out on without giving, somebody else the idea? Which one would you pick and why?
Obviously Murdoch, right? If I could write a book on the Murdoch case, but I'd need to get to Murdoch, right? And I'd need to use my own hocus pocus on finding the loopholes in getting him not to confess, because we know he'll never confess, but to getting enough information about his childhood, about his marriage, about all the incidentals in his life, which really, as we say, the devil's in the details. If I could get to those to him, then that would be my next book.
Well, I think, listen, you're very good at what you're doing, so maybe give it a shot. What do you got to lose, right? I mean, he almost had a retrial, so that got shot down, thankfully, but geez.
Right?
That's a whole other story going on down there. There's a lot more to that story, too, that we're so unaware of.
Oh, for sure. And the thing is, the fact that he lost the retrial and sitting there now is kind of stuck, this may be the time that he'll talk. So now that I'm telling everyone, maybe he'll get a lot of mail. I don't know. But let's see. We'll see.
Well, listen, Aphrodite, I want to thank you for your time today. I know you are very busy today. Everybody in the chat room, lots of people saying nice things about you too. If you missed this, you can always watch it on the replay, guys. But all of Aphrodite's books are in the show notes. Take a look at some of the ones that we spoke about today, and then if you're looking for the next true crime reading, listen, the summer's coming, some good beach reading. Aphrodite, I want to thank you again for joining me today, and hopefully in the future you can come back on maybe after your book on Murdoch.
Okay, you've got a deal. Okay, my next book, whatever it is,
right.
Or next project, I'm coming on.
Sounds like a plan. All right, everybody. Listen, have a great rest of your Sunday and have a great week, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.